Observables is an amazing messaging and event system for Unity. It will make your game development faster, easier, and more resilient. Here's a simple example scene, which contains just 2 cubes, a couple of buttons, and a simple counter. And if I start the scene, you will immediately see that I get some debug output here at the bottom, and that's part of the observable package. I will explain it more in a moment. And if I press on these buttons, then the cubes go up and down. And again, I'm getting debug output for that. I can also increase the counter here, and I can disable and enable the front cube. The interesting thing about all this is that this button, for example, doesn't know anything about cubes. Instead, it simply connects to a scriptable object and sends a value to it. And we can look at the scriptable object, so this whole thing becomes inspectable, and we can see that it has a description. It's an element in your hierarchy, so you can look at it easily. You can even see that it has 2 listeners attached to it. All this is information available in the inspector, and you have a few toggles here. So trace calls is enabled, which gives us the debug output we saw in the console. On this other scriptable object, we have the listener tracing enabled, and it also catches exceptions so that if there's a bug in your code, the whole thing doesn't stop. And likewise, the cube doesn't know where the event is coming from. All it does is subscribe to this event with a very simple script, and that's here. So on enable, it adds itself as a listener. On disable, it removes itself as a listener. And whenever the event is triggered, it will simply translate the cube. And it doesn't know where it's triggered from. It doesn't care where it's triggered from. It could be triggered from multiple sources. And then it also listens to this Boolean event. And that is a prepared component, so you don't need to write any code. And that simply enables or disables the mesh renderer depending on what the button will send to it. And that's how all parts in this scene work. They are all loosely coupled. So just looking at another example, if increasing the value here also means we have a button which doesn't know anything about a text field. It just changes a value. That's all it does. And this is a scriptable object value, part of the observables package, and it just increases this. And it doesn't care what happens after that. Isn't that cool? And this text simply listens to changes in this value and then updates the text whenever the value is changed. And again, it doesn't care, it doesn't know who changes this value why. The key advantages of observables. Thanks to loose coupling, strong typing, and no need to pass function names as strings anymore, you will have fewer bugs in your code. Also, your whole event system becomes more transparent. You can inspect events in the editor, including a list of current subscribers. You can trigger them or change values in the editor, and you can enable debug output per event. Your development will become easier because you can call listeners with try-catch blocks, so the whole game loop doesn't need to fail if one not important UI element is bugged. Again, this can be configured per event. And observable variables are just cool. You can edit them from anywhere in your code, and anything that needs updating will automatically be updated. And finally, you can write your own data classes and you can pass any data that you need through events. It's very easy, there are examples included. You can get observables on the Unity Asset Store.